Hello. Today I would like to share with you some things about verbs, our next part of speech. Simple definition: a verb is a word that expresses time while it shows an action, a condition, or fact that something exists. Now, in some languages, verbs do not express time, but they do in English and in most other European languages. A verb normally has a subject, that is, a noun or pronoun, that does the action or has the condition. Notice here we have the verbs on the same screen highlighted for you. Is shows condition. Verb is its subject and is something about its condition. In this case, it's a word. Expresses. Here, it's an action that expresses. Again, the subject here is the pronoun that. It, another pronoun. Shows is the verb. Okay, another action. Exists could be either a state of existence or an action, depending on how you look at it. Do express, another verb. Do, another verb. Has is a verb. Has is a kind of action, I guess you could say. Possession. Does is an action. Shows is an action. Okay, these are all verbs here. And we talk about different kinds of verbs. Basically, three kinds of verbs. And in those kinds of verbs, there are some subsets as well. An action verb is a verb that tells what action someone or something is doing. In this sentence, tell is an action verb. It tells us what the verb is doing. And is doing is an action verb. Something is doing something. And in English, there are two kinds of action verbs: transitive verbs and intransitive verbs. It helps if you think about what the word transit means. Transit means to go across or go through. And so a transitive verb goes across from one thing, the subject, to something else, just as the transit buses in a city go through or across the city. The action of a transitive verb is directed to something or someone named in the sentence. And the receiver of the action, whether it's a person, place, thing, idea, or whatever, is known as the direct object. And so a transitive verb directs the action to someone or something else. So, in this case, directs is a transitive verb. The verb directs what? Directs the action. Okay, so the verb is the subject doing the directing, and the directing is done to the action. A little simpler sentence: I like you. I is the subject, the verb is like, and the receiver of the liking, the receiver of the action is you. So you is the direct object of the transitive verb. In most dictionaries, transitive verbs are abbreviated VT. Here is an example from one of the dictionaries we use in school. From take, we have the word, tell how it's pronounced, then the abbreviation VT, followed by the principal parts of the verb, how we conjugate the verb, and then followed by the definition. Intransitive verbs, can you believe, are verbs that are not transitive. In other words, they do not direct the action towards someone or something else. One thing that might be helpful to remember this is the verb go is always intransitive. You never do a go to anything or anyone else. And intransitive verbs are abbreviated VI in most dictionaries. So some examples here. Unlike go, many verbs are sometimes transitive and sometimes intransitive. It depends on whether there's a direct object, whether there is someone or something receiving the action or not. Here is a simple example. He walks the dog every day. In this sentence, walks is transitive. He is doing the walking to something else. He is walking the dog. The dog is receiving the action. Whereas in this sentence, he walks to school every day. This is intransitive. He is walking, but he's not doing that walking to anything else. He's just walking. Okay, so that is intransitive. Yeah, to school tells us where, but the school is not receiving the action of the walking. Okay, another type of verb is called the linking verb. Think of what it means to link. Okay, when we link things, we join things. So, linking verbs join a word or phrase near the beginning of the sentence with a word or phrase near the end. Okay, in this sentence, Jesus is Lord. Is links Lord with Jesus. In this case, linking another noun, the noun Lord, with the subject, Jesus. Okay, in this sentence, everything seems fine. Seems is the linking verb. In this case, it links the subject, everything, pronoun, with the adjective, fine. Okay, so linking verbs sometimes link nouns to the subject, sometimes they link adjectives to the subject. And many verbs can be linking verbs or action verbs depending on how they are used in the sentence. And so you have to ask yourself, are they linking things? Or are they showing a state of existence? Or is there an action taking place? So, for example, the eyes of the Lord look all over creation. Here, look is an action verb. God is looking, using his eyes. It's an action. Whereas in this sentence, he looks tired today. In this case, this is a linking verb. It's linking tired with the subject. If you're not sure whether it's a linking verb or an action verb, here's a little trick that I found that works well. Use the same tense of seem to replace the verb you have a question about. If the sentence still makes sense, the meaning may change slightly, but if the sentence still makes sense, then you know you have a linking verb, because in modern English, seem is always a linking verb. So if we say, the eyes of the Lord seem all over creation, that doesn't really make any sense. So you know that's an action verb. Whereas, he seems tired today, that still makes sense. It means almost the same thing. So we know that that is a linking verb in that sentence. And another little tip, sometimes linking verbs are sometimes seen as similar to an equal sign. You know, he equals tired. Okay, sometimes that helps with some people to remember what a linking verb does. Here are the most common linking verbs. I think you'll find these listed in your grammar book. Appear, look, remain, sound. Notice that most of these, except for seem, sometime, and in modern English become, can also be action verbs. The magician can make the coin appear. Okay, there, it's an action verb. The coin pops up, it appears. Okay, whereas he appears tired, there it's a linking verb. So, And also the most common linking verb is the verb to be. And remember, the verb to be has many different forms. It can be am, are, is, was, were, and then other forms with the words be, been, or being, like will be, has been, are being, or something like that. So we use is and was and were, different forms of the verb to be all the time in English. Okay, third type of verb that we use in English we call auxiliary verbs or helping verbs. An auxiliary verb is a verb that can be added to another verb or verb form to make a verb phrase. In other words, you have more than one word together that altogether form a phrase that is a verb. So, I have worked on this for a long time. Have worked is a verb phrase. Have is the auxiliary verb. In this particular instance, I have highlighted the verb phrase and then italicized the auxiliary verbs. He will be going there tomorrow. Will be going is the verb phrase. Will be are both auxiliary verbs. So you sometimes can have more than one auxiliary verb in a verb phrase. These are the common auxiliary verbs. Notice that most of these can be the main verb sometimes. So you have to ask yourself, is this word by itself, or is it part of a verb phrase? So to be, in all its different forms, is often an auxiliary verb. So do, does, did, have, has, had, shall, should, will, would, can, could, may, might, must, as you can see here. Okay, couple of warnings about verbs. Sometimes adverbs or other words will separate an auxiliary verb from the rest of the verb phrase, but those other words are not part of the verb. So for example, this sentence, he has not returned yet. Has returned is the verb. Not is not part of the verb. Not is just a adverb that's telling us something about has returned. Okay, it's not part of the verb. Okay, a lot of times with questions, of course, we change the word order, and so we'll put the subject between the two parts of the verb phrase. So, do you like ice cream? Do and like is the verb phrase, do like, and you is the subject. It's not part of the verb at all. Okay. Most auxiliary verbs can be main verbs too, so again, look for the verb phrase. In this sentence, he has the keys to death and hell. Has is the main verb. It's not a phrase, it's one verb. Okay, he has risen from the dead. Here, has risen is the verb phrase, so the word has is the auxiliary verb that goes with the main verb risen. If a dictionary notes linking verbs, it usually abbreviates them LV, although a lot of dictionaries consider linking verbs a kind of intransitive verb, but it is helpful to separate them in your mind. And if a dictionary notes auxiliary verbs, it usually abbreviates them VAUX, V-A-U-X. Again, just a reminder, if you have any questions, feel free to ask in class. If you're watching this and you don't come to my class, you can always go to www.englishplus.com and go to our contact page, and someone will try to answer the question for you there. Thank you very much.